Big Talk is a member of Odd Pods Media and the ASAP Network.
Welcome into Big Talk, college sports with Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. I'm Dalton Shetler. That's Sam Sprunger. We are just that entrance music. Again, this is kind of new if you're new with us as well. This is about the second show I've been on. Yes, shame on you. Second show I've been on with the new entrance music, and it's kind of bone chilling, man.
Yeah, it gets you caught up if you're not ready for it. If you like, I'm assuming you're probably still a little used to the old music. And then you get that and you're like, oh yeah, that's right. And it gets you going. It gets you going.
We did just undergo a name change not that long ago. Formerly, we're Big 10 Plus 4. If you are new to the news, we are now Big Talk, and we will be Big Talk moving forward. But also in terms of some production notes before we get fully into the show and all the content, we were just talking just a moment ago. We know that this show has been offered to you twice a week for the most part here in the last several months. That might start scaling back to once a week until we get football going again, basketball going again, because you guys don't just need us to, blabber about nothing for an extra hour.
Top 10 lists are great, but they're not something great to do all the time. So, we get into that until we start in the future, maybe covering softball / baseball. There's not a lot that we can really jump into that we're not going to just keep recycling or digging deep and struggling with it. Now, that's not to say we won't have a second show every once in a while during the week, right. but it'll be one of those we'll let you know well before that show comes on.
Yeah, and much to Sam's point, not just about top 10 lists or whatever, like we really have an emphasis on wanting to get you up-to-date content, talking about the things that are going on in the show, and during the summer, we're just not able to do that for double the length. So we'll be scaling back to once as we move forward.
Or if we decide we're going to go 2 shows, they'll be shorter shows.
Yeah.
Twice a week. So those are some things that we're playing with. But right now, at least for the time going forward for the next few weeks, it'll be once a week. And then if we think, well, we could do maybe a little bit more, we might shorten the show, but do it twice a week.
So there's your transparent entrance.
You just
to
had our production meeting.
But figured it was important to let you all know what's going on moving forward with the show. For today's show, there's quite a bit going on between the WNBA and the Big Ten's impact in it. Sam mentioned Big Ten baseball and softball. I'd like to also mention Michigan State right now tied for second in Big Ten baseball. Just getting my shameless MSU plug in there.
Yeah, that's about right.
I think now's a decent time to talk Big Ten basketball and what some current rosters are looking like, because there was some big news over the last week that we can be getting to. Besides that
university you don't like to mention had some big news one way and the other.
And the university I do like to mention has some big news as well. So, you know what? Matter of fact, let's go ahead and start there. And isn't it interesting, though, that we're all excited about Big Ten basketball and roster movement? Do you remember April used to be a time where we really dove into spring football games? Yeah. I found myself really distancing so much from being embedded in what's going on in spring football. I don't know if I'm alone or if people are like me in that sense.
I used to get excited for spring football just for the fact that that meant football was around the corner. Mm-hmm. I never really dove into it to where I was like, analyzing. I'm not Dalton Shetler where I'm analyzing the 4 quarterbacks that play in the Michigan State, spring game to where I know their favorite colors and stuff. And that's not me dissing you at all.
Sure.
But at the same time, it was one of those, I'm like, all right, it's coming. It's right there. But I'm kind of the same way now that there's more things happening in other sports in their off season. Football, it doesn't mean that it takes completely away from football, but it puts a less of an emphasis, like you said, on the spring, because there's still things happening with what just ended.
Yep.
All of a sudden rosters are starting to turn over, which, think about that. When you were younger, did you ever think that you would be talking about roster turnovers in college sports coming, right out off the heels of a season ending? It's a bit perplexing, but yet it keeps me more interested in the side that I tend to like more.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, and it is a great point. It's rosters. I mean, we say they're overturning, and a lot of them legitimately are.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of people in the transfer portal is just bonkers. Like it's a really, really big deal. There's a lot of movement going on, and much to you mentioned in your tease, there's a university that isn't necessarily my favorite. Had some movement, that being Michigan. Hunter Dickinson hit the transfer portal,
which is shocking to me. I didn't think that was even a thing that was gonna happen or could happen.
Just because he's embodied the Michigan man mantra.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, he's just always his years at Michigan. He's kind of embodied what you see in Michigan for the most part. Even when it was going tough, you could always count Hunter Dickinson was going to be that constant that was always there. And now he's going to be in a different, more than likely. There's always a chance he could return, but once you hit the transfer portal, it's more than likely that you're leaving. And that just, to me, kind of boggles the mind a touch.
And he becomes the first in the transfer portal age to be an All-American to hit the transfer portal. Yeah. This is a bit unprecedented what we're seeing there with Hunter Dickinson, but he hits the portal. Jet Howard goes to the NBA draft. Kobe Buffkin hits the NBA draft. And all of a sudden you're looking at Ann Arbor and thinking, what is there for next year?
And then it happens, Dalton.
Then they're on the receiving end of the transfer portal as North Carolina guard Caleb Love, who, of course, was a star in that Final Four, not this just past year, but the year prior when they beat Duke in the Final Four and ended Coach K's career. Caleb Love now goes to Michigan, and you have somebody there that puts up a lot of shots, sometimes ill-advised shots. He's somebody who I think might be best described as irrationally confident. And
it's accurate. I don't disagree.
and at times, I mean, the bucket is just wide open for him. And other times it's just not necessarily a great shot. But my point is, we just talked about how bare that cupboard is. And I don't want to make it sound like there's nothing there, because Doug McDaniel's back. Will Chatter should be back. As far as I've seen, I haven't seen anything different, but I'm pretty sure Will Chatter's there. My point is, though, that's a talent that you can kind of ride or die with, is what Caleb Love is. And that kind of fits. I mean, given what that team's landscape is at the moment, it seems to fit.
Yeah. And let's say it this way. You just mentioned that Hunter Dickinson's the first All-American to enter the transfer portal. Had Caleb Love improved from his season prior, he probably would have too.
Yeah.
I think also North Carolina might have been in the tournament. There might not have been as much. I don't know what reasoning he entered and then transferred. But if something would have went better, maybe he's still in Chapel Hill. But the point I'm trying to make is Michigan's getting a talent that could be an All-American to replace an All-American with. They seem to, even though they took a hit with Dickinson, and I'm not going to mention Howard or Buffkin just because they're going to the NBA. They're not going elsewhere in college. But with that replacement, they might not feel it as much. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not the same player. I would take, honestly, Hunter Dickinson over Love any day. But you have that capability. He has that capability to be an absolute playmaker and game decider.
And again, like with that landscape, you get somebody who can create shots, make shots. Like it's not a bad move for Juwan Howard and for Caleb Love to hook up there in Ann Arbor.
Can I ask this question? Is this kind of not a last gasp, but is this something that if it doesn't pan out, that maybe Juwan Howard might be on a hot seat after next year? I'm not trying to dump on Howard. It's just he's had some struggles the past 2 years with teams that should have produced at a higher level or were expected to produce at a higher level, that maybe this year, if it doesn't work out and they struggle again, maybe there's some chatter that Howard's not the right one in Ann Arbor.
Well, and I think I could imagine that drumming up, just given the fact that this will be year 5 for Juwan at Michigan. And I think what's really important to note is how Michigan has developed in that 5-year period as we get ready to enter year 5 for Juwan. Now, granted, in his second year there, they won the Big Ten regular season during that COVID year. They were able to win that. But you'll notice the point guard on that team was a transfer. They got Mike Smith in. Like every year, Juwan has had his point guard be a transfer guard come in. And I do believe that the transfer portal can make you or it can break you. I think that's really just the way it is. Look at Illinois this last year. They transferred all kinds of talent in with Shannon, with Meyer, and it never quite clicked. And for better or for worse, and I don't even know if it's necessarily by choice, but Juwan has lived in the transfer portal, much again with Dickinson being gone, bringing Caleb Love in. Like a lot of what he's done is through the transfer portal. And I think some of this really will depend on people's personal philosophies if you believe that's sustainable. I'm not so sure that the transfer portal is a sustainable way to live. I think it's a great accessory to your
supplement.
program.
It's an absolute supplement, it shouldn't be your dinner, you know?
And 100%. And I think if you go about it that way, I think that's the most effective and productive way. Like if we're just going to completely generalize everything and throw this massive blanket everywhere, like I think that's the way to kind of go. That's not how it's really been in Michigan for the most part. I think that's fair to say. I mean, he has had recruits. Jet was a kid straight from high school, his own kid. But but you get what I'm trying to say. Like, there's been a lot of transfer dependence at Michigan so far, and we're not seeing it necessarily take a step up each year. And I do believe that would cause somebody to look at that and say, is this sustainable? Is this growing? Where is it?
Well, I guess that was why I asked that, because it seems like he's always in the portal and getting main pieces. Let's talk about the portal just a touch. There are exceptions, but most of the time it's going to be players that aren't happy with their current situation.
Correct.
Not necessarily that, okay, like Brandon Newman, he entered the transfer portal. I think he saw the writing on the wall that he was already a 6th, 7th man, and there's more talent coming in and not necessarily any talent leaving, to where he's seeing his minutes dwindling. It doesn't necessarily mean he's unhappy. It just means he wants to have more playing time.
Yes.
Whereas a lot of times, coach ticked me off. I'm leaving this place. And if you're making your bed there, what happens when you tick off that player? He's going to leave, and I know that's another broad generalization, because I'm sure there are multiple reasons why people enter into the portal. But
correct,
for the most part, I would assume and have seen that, and maybe it's just, well, I just don't get along. That locker room's toxic. Well, what did that player define toxic as? Or what? It's all subjective to that player. So what happens when Juwan Howard yells at Caleb Love, or it doesn't match his ideal of what it perfectly was going to be in Ann Arbor, and then he decides he's leaving after 1 year, and he's kind of missing the forest for the trees, kind of. I think I still would think I would want to get a high school player that you start from day one wanting him. And when he comes, that means, he's chosen Michigan or whatever. So
right.
I don't know. It's a tough one, because you can get a lot of great players. David Jenkins for Purdue last year was a big key to when Braden Smith needed to come off the floor, you still had a floor general that was just fine. Good additive. Purdue's added, I can't remember the kid's name from Southern Illinois, but they added him. There's a guy from Baylor that I'm horrible with names, but there's the point guard from Baylor that has said that he's interested in Purdue, but he's not, Painter's not going out and making that. Well, I'm looking for a point guard. I'm going to the portal.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but Lance Jones was the guard for Purdue.
Thank you. So it's one of those that I think you're right. These teams that absolutely live in the portal, they can see some success, but I don't know that they're going to hit the lottery every year. Just like you're not going to hit the lottery on your recruits, but still, at least recruiting wise, when you're recruiting them out of high school, you're getting them without any college preconceived notions.
And again, I do believe, and the other part to what you're saying there is you can land a high school kid, but that doesn't mean they stay at your place. And that's a counter that somebody would use in that situation, which is totally fair. But I do believe the poster child for this again is Illinois. I mean, you go back just a couple of years ago, and this was wings. Yeah, it's just and they had players leaving in the middle of the season. Like, it just didn't quite work. It doesn't mean everything will necessarily blow up like it did for Illinois last year, but yeah, it's such a culture building with the everyday guys, right? The Trent Frazier, the Ayo Dosunmu, Kofi Coburn, like they all came to Illinois, they embodied what it was, and now they all left, obviously, for graduation or MBA, whatever.
Transfer.
Yeah, well, those guys didn't though. But like you had that
guys, but yeah, okay, sorry.
No. But that's what I'm getting at. Like, they had kind of the team that we're talking about that you want to develop, you want to authentically have connected there and with you. And when they all left for different reasons, graduation, pro, whatever. I mean, they had to fill the cupboard. Brad filled it with talent from the transfer portal, and it just didn't work. I'd be curious what Brad thinks in terms of just philosophy with transfer portal now, given last year and using that as hindsight. Like, is there a lesson to be learned for a coach in that situation? I think that would be a great question to ask him at Big Ten Media Days coming up, just to kind of see. And again, not to make a generalization, because as you pointed out, there are multiple reasons people are in the transfer portal. That doesn't ever mean that you just grab talent and things are going to blow up like that. But it definitely feels like there's a tread with caution sticker now put on the transfer portal, at least through Brad's prism, given last year.
I would think that he would have a different look at it simply because of the comments he made near the end of the season, saying that they were still trying to gel, and he hoped that they still gel. And that to me says that maybe there's in the back of his mind going, I made a big mistake. Because let's think about this. Chickens only have 2 wings. Why are you adding 4? You can't fly with 4 wings. You got to have only 2 and just keep on, fill the cupboard with something other than that. I always go to KFC and order my bucket of chicken without the wings. So, yeah.
So what kind of chicken do you get?
Oh, I like the thighs, legs, and breasts. I mean, chickens, you got wings. If they're not covered in really good, some sort of sauce,
yeah,
to me, it's not worth picking through that to get the meat.
This is
my thought.
This is a not sponsored talk on KFC.
Correct. No free ads.
Have you had that spicy chicken sandwich?
I have not. I've seen it.
Go.
Are you telling me what to do, Dalton?
Yes, I am.
This might be the one time I follow through with this one.
I'm telling you, fast food went into a craze a couple of years ago with spicy chicken sandwiches, and KFC's it's up there. It's sneakily up there. Nobody talks about it.
Well, let's think about this. KFC is, long time known to be an awesome chicken joint. You got to think they got to do a chicken sandwich that's spicy. Boom. I'm
telling you.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Chick-fil-A's got theirs, Popeye's got theirs, but let's think of the old school, like KFC style chicken with a little bit of spice to it. Oh, yeah.
Also underrated? Their fries. Their fries are underrated.
Are you talking about the wedges?
No.
Or do they actually have fries?
They have fries.
Okay. Well, then, because I'm not a big fan of the potato wedges. So
I get that.
And welcome to KFC Talk.
Yes, can say. But do yourself a favor, go get a combo. Let me know what you think, because I'm telling you, it's under the radar.
Now, what I've got to do, though, is I've got to drive at least 25 minutes one way or the other just to get to a KFC. So I will be doing it. It may not be today.
Map out your day over the weekend.
I've got to run to Lima. Where's the KFC? There it is. I'll do it. Don't get me wrong.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, we 100% could fill the other show with fast food talk. We might need to explore options. I'm always down for fast food talk. That's right.
Big Talk talks fast food.
All right,
we can figure something out. A little off.
Yeah. We have options. Let's break the first quarter. We'll come back and talk a little more Big Ten after this.
Yes, sir.
All right, for Big Ten here, would like to still stay with basketball. We spent a lot of time talking transfer portal, and I didn't even get the stat that I was researching for quickly. This is courtesy of Matt Zenitz, who is with On3 Sports on Twitter. He tracked that over 20% of D1 college basketball scholarship players have entered the transfer portal.
Say that again.
Over 20% of D1.
That's one out of every
basketball.
5.
Yep.
So, like in your starting lineup, let's say one of those guys will be in the transfer portal or have been.
Yep. So that goes to show, and kind of is the cherry on top of the conversation we're having. So much to Sam's point again, transfer portal doesn't just equal good, doesn't just equal bad. It goes case by case. But when you're talking about more than 1 out of every 5, yeah, there's some bad happening there for everybody involved. But anyways, I want to talk real quick about like the top of the Big Ten basketball for this upcoming year, because as we sit here April 12th, 2023, I think we can confidently, much more so than last year, we can confidently say, unless there are giant roster changes over the next few weeks or whatever, or big injuries throughout the year, who the best 2 teams are in the Big Ten next year. I think it's right in front of us. I think we could have an argument
literally
about
right in front of us.
Yes. And I think we could have maybe even debate who's the best. I'm not so necessarily concerned about that, but I think it's Michigan State and Purdue, because Michigan State this last week got Tyson Walker to announce he's coming back and Malik Hall to announce he's coming back. Those 2 come back, and it's centered around, Jaden Akins being back, Trey Holloman's there, Monty Sissoko's back, Jackson Kohler, but it also has a recruiting class that, in terms of recruiting metrics and analytics, since they've started keeping track of these, and really it picked up 15, 20 years ago in recruiting, this is the best class by the metrics that Tom Izzo's ever had at Michigan State.
Restate that for everybody that's listening. This is the gentleman that's coached at Michigan State for 28 years.
Yep.
Been to 8 Final Fours, multiple national championship games, and has won 1. Go ahead. Again.
This is, by the recruiting metrics, the best class Tom Izzo has pulled in to Michigan State. Now, I do think it's important. I believe the Flintstones were before the metrics started.
Sure.
Came into existence. I think that's fair to qualify.
That's his national championship.
Correct.
Win. Let's think about, but put that in, that is an amazing thing for you to say.
Yeah.
About a man that is already a Hall of Famer, will be one of the best, if not the best, Big Ten coach ever to walk the sidelines. And this next year is the best class he's ever had, according to metrics, since they've started.
Yeah, it's important for me to throw those qualifiers in, because, again, just a few years ago, he had a class of Nick Ward, Cassius Winston, Josh Langford, and Miles Bridges. So, like with hindsight,
right.
that was pretty good.
Yeah. Now, like we talked, though, players develop or they don't develop. So it could be that it doesn't turn out to be that class that was the best. It might not even be close to rivaling the Flintstones. But my point is, going into the season, he's never had this much talent from his recruiting class coming in.
Yep.
According to metrics. And that's just a huge, it blows my perception of how much greater can he get. That blows it out of the water, because you know what? He's bringing in better talent now.
Yeah.
And it's just, go ahead.
Well, I'm pulling up the recruiting rankings here so I can actually give you the numbers for these guys. But Jeremy Fears Jr. is the point guard that's coming in, either a 4-star or 5-star. That's why I want to pull this up here in just a moment. But they also have Xavier Booker, kid coming out of Indiana, who's a big and really should help shore up that front court. Coming into this season. All right, I got it here. So Xavier Booker right now is 10th in the country for his class of 2023. Scrolling down, trying to find Fears because he should be the next highest rated. He's 31st best recruit in the country in this class. Cone Carr,
and this is
40th.
Barring
best.
Position, it's just best recruit, correct?
Just overall. So they have 3 top 40 recruits coming in.
Wow.
And again, you take that talent, you take basically what you just had this last year, minus Joey Hauser, at least
Hogarth's
for now.
Back?
Hogarth's back.
Whoa!
So you got Hogard, you have Walker, you have Akins, which
Goodness.
Akins is primed to explode. Well, maybe he should be. Michigan State is that good next year.
Well, and you talked about, the front runners are right in front of us. We still don't know if Zach Edey's coming back yet. If he comes back,
right,
then I would say it's probably Purdue, then Michigan State, but only from what has happened, this last year. You wouldn't think that the National Player of the Year and then what's being added to him would be less of what they were this year. Now, maybe not, the at one point 23-2, that type of thing, because you're going to be getting into league play, obviously. But with Purdue, they've got Miles Colvin coming in.
Yep.
They've got William Berg, who is a redshirt, who is going to start playing next year, who's 7'2" and versatile. He can shoot the three. He can dribble in, take you off. He can post you up. He's going to be. He could be, in my mind, and this is a huge statement to think about who he would be replacing he could be the best 7-footer in Purdue's history.
Boy,
could.
Now hang on. No, hang on what? We just saw the season Zach Edey had.
Yep,
you can't make that right. The bar. You can't.
Why can't William Berg come in and do better than that?
Because Zach Edey is only the second Purdue Boilermaker in history to win the Wooden Award, the Naismith Award. What Zach Edey just did, it can't just be the bar you throw in front of a 19. I think Jeremy Fears at Michigan State is going to be excellent. I wouldn't just say he's the next Cassius, because it's not a fair standard.
I said he could be, because of what he has versatility-wise over just being able to post up and shoot from 7 to 8 feet away with extreme accuracy. He can pull a center out. He can dribble past him, or if the center doesn't want to come out, maybe he can drop a three. I'm not saying Matt Tendom is the first 7-footer I remember Purdue having, and he was garbage in the aspect of stats. But my point being is he came in as a 7-footer, and you're like, holy cow, Purdue's got a 7-footer. And now he's Zach Edey set the bar, and look at his progression. There's got to be more than, if it's not just his drive, the coaching is doing well in there, at least on the big men, and getting them better. So if William Berg had a year of doing nothing but getting better, no performance in games and just getting better, what's he going to do in the off seasons? What's he going to do in practices leading up to games and stuff that could make him better? I've seen reels of William, doing his workouts and things, and he can do a dribble where he pulls up on a dime and pulls it and drops it in somebody. If you can do that, I'm not saying he's going to be the absolute best. I'm saying he could, with what I've seen him in his recordings.
And that's
just
fair.
For the fact that he offers that 7'2", that height. He's not the build that Zach Edey is. He's not as heavy, and muscle bound as Zach Edey, but he can still go to the post. I'm sure he can still, dominate 6'8" players that are going up against him. But then you pull him out to the outside. He's not just a pick and handoff. He's a pick and, oh my gosh, he's got the ball. We better be on him, because if not, he's going to drop a shot in our faces. So I'm saying he could be, and he's still got at least 3 more years to be able to be at Purdue. Well, 4, I guess, because this was his freshman redshirt year. So he could have up to 4 years to turn into a better version of what Zach Edey just did. I'm not saying it's etched in stone, Dalton. Not at all.
No, and that's fair. I want to make it very clear to the listeners what we're talking about here with Zach Edey. Because what this man just did this year was simply ridiculous. I just pulled the numbers up. He averaged 22.3 points a game. He averaged 13 rebounds a game. He shot 61% from the floor,
which is absurd.
Like what he just did is simply unbelievable. And so I just want to make sure we all actually understand the magnitude of Zach Edey's.
And that's why it was a little hesitation to say it, but at the same time, you got to make some sort of observation that if you're right, you can go and hang your head on. So in 3 years, when we're in year 5 of this show,
when Berg is averaging 30, 15 shooting.
Hey, you know what? Glenn Robinson went from about 17 points a game his sophomore year to 30.3 his junior year. It is a possibility that we could be looking at something that is just abnormal, and we could not see. Did we see Zach Edey jumping from what his averages were with Jaden Ivey and Trevion Williams to this last year? No. We thought, okay, he's going to be a solid player in the post. We didn't think he was going to be dominant. So like progression does happen, and it can happen, and that's why I'm saying it could turn out to where he could be the most.
You're using the keyword. You're using the keyword. Yeah.
I was born at night, but not last night. No.
But to before we round out this conversation, and this can be one of our longer quarters, but again, we're talking about Michigan State and Purdue here. And that's, again, qualifying if Edey comes back for Purdue. If Edey's not back for Purdue, they take a step back in the rankings.
I still think it maybe it's Michigan and Michigan State, Purdue. Then if Edey doesn't come back, because you have that unproven William Berg and Colvin coming in, that you still don't know exactly what that's going to turn into. Now, if you have Edey, which you're pretty positive what it's going to be when he comes back, then you add those two pieces, it makes you go, okay, I think maybe Purdue's the better the preseason pick over Michigan State, but I think Edey leaves, it's the other way around.
And it's the national pundits before Tyson Walker and Hall had officially announced they were coming back, still had Michigan State a top 5 team.
Yeah.
Hanging around there.
Purdue was 4 and Michigan State was 5 or 6.
And now with those two coming back, like where Michigan State is standing, it's pretty up there. But so you have those two teams, and one of the conversations I wanted to get to around this, I started to think, because I was like, man, this is gearing up to be a pretty good battle between these two teams for the upcoming season. If rosters stay the same, everything else. And I sat there and I was like, okay, we're coming off a year where the Big Ten had 8 teams in the Big Dance. There is so much just right in the middle, right? Sandwiched. Everybody was like trying to fight for elbow room. You have Michigan State and Purdue, and we could argue about 1-2. I didn't really care to do that on April 12th. You might care to do that April 12th. I don't care to do it for another 6.5 months.
I was going to say, let's wait until at least we get double-digit month numbers.
But my point was, that's 1 and 2. Who's 3 right now?
Yeah. Honestly, I would say someone like maybe the likes of Wisconsin, because they still have some stuff in the cupboard. They're losing some stuff, but maybe like the Wisconsin. I don't think Northwestern. I think they're losing enough that they're going to pull back.
Well, let's take a look at those individually real quick. So Wisconsin, I believe, is getting Tyler Wall back. Mm-hmm. I believe
Essegian
is back. I believe Davis hit the portal. No,
I remember seeing that. So I think he is in the portal.
Hepburn should be back. I don't remember seeing any news different.
I haven't seen anything lately. Now, that's not to say that I'm not wrong. I mean, if you want to know my accuracy, go watch some of the past tournament analysis. And
I've been at a lot of Big Ten baseball diamonds for the last couple of weeks, so everything for me starts spinning around in here. But I believe that to be the case for what Wisconsin's bringing back. Right. Northwestern loses Bowie,
and that's huge for them. because he wasn't just a leading scorer. He was a floor general. I think he was the glue that kept that team together and going forward last year. So I'm not saying they're going to be garbage, but I think they're going to take a big step back from what they were last year.
You know what team I would like to offer as maybe the third best entering the year?
Does it start with an R?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
It starts with an M. Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
Jameer Young has announced he's returning back to College Park. I believe, and this is not based on any kind of insider information. This is just kind of trying to read tea leaves a little bit. We talked about Hunter Dickinson earlier.
Could be going to Maryland.
From that area. Maryland just hired a coach that has ties with DeMatha, has ties in a relationship with Hunter Dickinson. Maybe Dickinson goes back home, goes to Maryland, and it's Jameer Young and Hunter Dickinson. And you want to talk about a pick and roll or pick and pop combo that the Big Ten should be a little worried about. That would be a duo.
Oh my goodness. And honestly, that would make them a lot closer number 3 than I would have before. You know, I like Kevin Willard. I like what he's doing in Maryland. I think that would be enough without Dickinson to say, yeah, okay, I could put them at number 3, but you put Dickinson on that team. And mind you, I don't know that you've heard anything saying that he's leaning towards Maryland. It's
no,
just,
and I do want to make that clear.
There could be some correlation to him going to College Park.
Yep.
And the thing is you do that, oh my goodness, you're right. If that were to happen, I think Maryland's a lot closer of a number 3 than I would have in the first place.
Mm-hmm. But isn't it interesting? It seems like, now, again, this last year, Purdue had a great year during the regular season.
Right.
But for the most part, excluding Purdue, and you could even poke kind of some caveat holes at Purdue, there wasn't necessarily, we talked about the Big Ten was incredibly competitive. It was above average. And that was that. Like 6 teams of the 8 were 7 to 10 seeds in the Big Dance. But there wasn't like the elite top of the line talent in the country residing in the Big Ten last year. Michigan State and Purdue can be that this upcoming year. But the rest of the Big Ten, I'm very curious. Now, again, we're early in the days of trying to figure out rosters here with Big Ten basketball and what these are going to look like. So, I mean, things can absolutely flip on a dime. But I do think it's interesting when we start having that conversation. We feel like 1 and 2 is kind of set right now. But who would be number 3? It's an interesting conversation.
I would say maybe with depends on what all Wisconsin's got, what they can do in the portal, or what I haven't seen what recruits guards got coming in even, so I don't know that. But I just it's Wisconsin. Like that's kind of one of my fallbacks. Like when in doubt, just pick Wisconsin because like that's football and basketball. They usually tend to rise towards the top and be there, but Maryland is you convinced me on that because they
even without Dickinson, I think they're interesting.
Correct. Yeah. And that's what I was getting at is, you know, even if you don't throw Dickinson in there, now you throw Dickinson in there, I think they're clear cut number 3.
Yeah. Whew. Could be interesting.
Food for thought.
It's going to be a lot of fun to see how these rosters shake up, which, hey, by the way, one that just went under our nose, Jamison Battle transferred to Columbus. He's played for Ohio State next year. So that's something to keep in mind for Big Ten fans.
I've seen the way too early top 25 power rankings, whatever. Ohio State's in the teens. So like they're expecting Ohio State to be pretty good this next year too. Yeah. Maryland's in it. You know, you've got Purdue, Michigan State, and then you have Maryland, Ohio State, and I think those were the 4 that were in the rankings. And then after that, it was just kind of receiving votes, you know, or whatever. But I think, I think Ohio State could be a tough one if they don't go on a huge losing streak like they did last year with one of the best freshmen in the country, you know?
Yep. So next couple of weeks, we'll keep updated with what's going on with basketball movement. We'll make sure to talk about it. We'll dive even deeper into some of these rosters, what exists.
Spring football starts, we can start talking football.
It's already started.
No, I'm talking about deep started. I know they've already started, but I'm not going to talk about that third down throw the third string quarterback from Illinois had.
See, I just don't have a ton of interest in this either. Now, Michigan's already played their spring game.
Mhm.
There are, I think, 5 or 6 coming up this weekend, including Michigan State's. But it's in terms of conversation fodder,
right.
It doesn't have the same pull that it used
It's
to.
Essentially, and it always has been, but I think it has to do with the fact that honestly, I would probably know or be concentrating a little bit more if there wasn't so much news coming out of college basketball still.
Yeah.
Like that is still holding on to me as we go. Football doesn't get it because as football ends, basketball's getting into the main swing of things. So it kind of goes by the wayside, and it's not at all saying football's not interesting or top dog. It's just this news with basketball pulls my interest a little bit further.
And I feel like there are multiple waves of transfer portal with football. Like we're getting ready to have more transfer portal stuff in football coming up here once spring games close. Like there will be more transfers after they've already been transfers. It feels like you're kind of getting a preview at the team, but you don't exactly know what it's fully going to look like yet.
Hey,
like,
they
I don't
look
know.
Great, but 4 of their guys left after the spring game.
That's right. one of the after effects of the transfer portal we didn't realize was going to hurt was spring games. But that's, I kind of think where we're at right now. But anyway, we'll be diving, as we said, we're really interested in what's going on with roster management with Big Ten basketball. We'll be doing that in the future weeks as well, trying to update you on what's going on there. But in the meantime, you look like you got something.
Is the women's game as hectic portal-wise?
Yes, and we can get to that after the break.
There we go. Let's do it. You are listening to Big Talk, hosted on Spotify for podcasters and StreamYard.
Hey, this is Russ.
This is Kyle.
This is Michelle.
From the Infectious Groove Podcast. Join us every Monday for the most fun you can have with a music podcast. The Infectious Groove Podcast uses a positive and fun approach as we take time every week to share our jammy jams, then dig into a thought-provoking topic discussing all decades and genres of music. You can find the Infectious Groove Podcast on all major podcast platforms, or you can head to infectiousgroovepodcast.com to find us there and subscribe. We might have a controversial opinion here or there, but we always have fun with it.
Oh, I'm sure I'll say something dumb.
Subscribe to the Infectious Groove Podcast, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
This is Beer in Front. Every week I'll talk about a beer that maybe we've forgotten along the way while we get those check-ins and badges. Being the Chicago beer guy, I'll also talk about great craft beer in the city of Chicago. And remember, sometimes the beer in front of you is the best one yet. That's Beer in Front, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
All right, let's get ready for the second half. If you're wondering currently what Dalton is doing, he is pulling up the transfers for D1 women's basketball because there's actually, and this is a good chance to plug this person's work. I believe it's Raul, but at RAOUL_000. He has built this database where he keeps track of everybody transferring in, transferring out. If you look at the Big Ten, Illinois, Jayla Oden has announced that she's transferring out. Indiana's had multiple transfers head out. Taking a look at Iowa, Wettering has transferred out for the Hawkeyes. Moving forward, Michigan State's had a couple, of course, with the coaching change. I'm trying to find Maryland as I'm currently scrolling. But the point is, and maybe while I'm looking at this, we can kind of sprinkle in some of the WNBA draft talk around this. Matter of fact, I did pull up Maryland just now. They got a transfer in from NC State, Ja'Kiah Brown-Turner, but they've lost 3 players in the portal already, one being their highly touted freshman Reynolds from South Bend, Indiana. It'll be interesting to see where she lands. Michigan has had 4 players transfer out. Ari Wiggins has went to Butler. Seedor went to DePaul. Maddie Nolan's in the portal. She's a good 3-point shooter. Kate Clark has transferred out. Taylor Williams has transferred in from Western Michigan. Meanwhile, transferring out from Michigan State, as of now, Matilda Eck, Tyre Parks, Brooklyn Brewers, Jayla James, From Minnesota, they had Michal transfer out. Sophie Hart has transferred in from NC State. I mean, we can go through some of this, but for the WNBA draft here, Sam, 6 Big Ten players were selected in this draft, and it ties for the most that the Big Ten's ever had, including they had the number 2 draft go in Diamond Miller from Maryland. And what a great cap off it is for the Big Ten women's basketball on top of a historic season to see so many move up to the next level.
There were 3 in the first round. Like that 3 Big Ten players in the first round. You have Diamond Miller at number 2. Then you have Grace Berger from IU being drafted number 7. And then Abby Myers being drafted 11th by Dallas. I mean, and yeah, don't get me wrong. I see 3 South Carolina players in the top 12. But the point being is this conference hasn't been competitive in the sense of always being in the Final Four, competing for a national championship. The Big Ten hasn't been there that often. And so it makes it says something about the conference as a whole when you've got, 3 players from the league in the first round and 6 in what are there, 3 rounds, I think.
Yes.
And so,
but they're not like a full 30 picks. Like, I don't want people to have the wrong impression
per team per round.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's considerable. It's only 36 picks total for the draft.
Yep.
So when a 6th of those are coming from the Big Ten, that's a big statement, I think.
So Diamond Miller went 2, Grace Berger went 7. Do you have the list in front of you?
Yeah, Abby Myers went number 11.
11, and that's another Terp as well. Talk
Correct.
about sharpshooting, Abby Myers. And then Taylor Mikesell kind of got things going in the second round from Ohio
13.
State.
She went number 13. Then you have Leah Brown at number 15
from
Michigan. And there was one more.
Monica Sinano.
Yep, in the 3rd round, second pick of the 3rd round. So there's a lot. I mean, and they're sprinkled throughout the whole draft. That it's the Big Ten's making strides. I can tell you one team that was decimated by the WNBA draft is South Carolina. Goodness, I see 4 in the top 4 in the top 24 picks are from South Carolina. Goodness, and then the 5th one is the first pick of the 3rd round. So. I would assume that's their starting 5 that was drafted in the WNBA. That's to say that puts a stamp on how big that win Iowa had over them.
Absolutely.
When your whole starting lineup of your opposing team in your Final Four game, who was undefeated going into that game, all of them were drafted in the WNBA.
Yeah, South Carolina was really good.
Yeah, which just puts that big stamp on how big that win was for Iowa.
And I looked through more of the transfers. We can keep you updated on some of those. I've decided not to drag you too far into the weekend. We'll keep an eye on those as we continue through the offseason as well and kind of update you on what's going on with Big Ten women's basketball just as well as men's basketball, because again, the women's game coming off of, an explosion. 10 million viewers for that national championship game on average. It peaked around 13 million viewers. So we know there is an interest for women's basketball and specifically for Big Ten women's basketball because Caitlin Clark is back, folks. I mean, I know that's what drew a lot of the eyeballs to that title game. She's back again at Iowa. So
hopefully she learned a lesson.
Hopefully it's a very entertaining year for Big Ten women's basketball, and it certainly should be.
Can I make a statement about the state of Indiana with the way the WNBA is headed? The Indiana Fever had the number 1 pick.
Yep.
Okay. I was just looking to see they had 2 picks in the first round. They took Aaliyah Boston from South Carolina, number 1 overall. Then they took Grace Berger, number 7. That's great point guard, great, big down low. Then the first pick of the second round, they took Taylor Mikesell. Then with the 5th pick of the second round, they took LaDasia Williams from LSU.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go down to the 3rd round, they took Victoria Saxton from South Carolina. I mean, they loaded up with big names. Now, if they can gel and Indiana could be a big player in the WNBA the few years going forward. Jeez.
I'm excited to see that too. And of course, Boston, from when we tipped the season off, was going to be the number one pick. We just had to figure out where.
Yeah. And then the WNBA season worked its way out to where we knew where it was going. It was just a formality.
Berger and Mike Sell there. I'm really excited to see how that career takes off.
Those are some shooters that could happen. And Grace Berger was never a point guard going into her senior year. And then she was kind of forced to play point guard, and she did really, really well on a team that was in many eyes top 5 all year long, and people, even maybe a little higher, and they were a 1 seed. Yeah, they got upset, but that happens. It doesn't take away from what they did in the season, and she did a really good job as a point guard. So now, does that translate to where she's a point guard in WNBA or a shooting guard, or maybe she's a hybrid where she can do both? So help it out the fever a lot more there too.
So it should be a lot of fun. We'll keep you updated on Big Ten women's basketball throughout the offseason as well. But for now, let's break and head to the fourth quarter. All right, here for the fourth quarter before we wind down the show. I figure we should mention this. Now, I do want to be upfront with the listening audience. This is, again, a show that is taped, so it will be ran later in the day. But as of now, the information that we have is that sources are reporting. And I want to clarify this because this could very well become official.
By the time this airs, it could be done.
Yes. But it looks like the Big Ten is going to have a new boss man, a new commissioner coming to the Big Ten that's been a vacant seat for a little bit since Kevin Warren took the job with the Chicago Bears. I also want to be honest with the audience because we'll find this out, but I don't exactly know the pronunciation of the man's last name. Tony Petitti, I'm assuming is how you pronounce it. But former CEO,
maybe Petitti, but it doesn't. I mean, either way, you don't know.
So we'll get that information. I don't either. And
Petitti?
as you read more and more about his background, he was COO with the MLB. He's been a top TV executive working with ABC, some of the others. He helped create the BCS system for college football. He's been around a little bit, but for the most part, he's labeled as an outsider to college athletics. Like, this is a bit of a different hire that the Big Ten's doing, but what we do know, because we aren't 100% sure on pronunciation on his last name, we're not 100% sure by the time this airs if it will be official news or still just sources reported, and it looks like this is the case. But what we do know is you take, and now look, I'm not a huge business background person. I know basketball pretty well. I don't know business so much, but common sense tells me this is a man that comes with a TV background, working with the MLB, doing everything he's done with ABC, CBS, so forth. And we just saw Big Ten kind of wade the waters in signing a historic TV contract. I think that is vital in terms of what the Big Ten is looking for when they went to make this hire, is somebody that can help lead us into this regime of billions of dollars being thrown around for TV money.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was kind of the reasoning behind the hire. Hey, we have this big TV deal. We need to make sure we maintain it. And, like in 7 years, I'm sure they expect him to be around longer than the TV deal that's coming into play. So they're probably looking at, okay, I'm sure they start at least negotiations for the next one a couple of years, 3 years into it. If not, a little bit later, maybe a couple of years left. But I would think they'd want to have all the T's crossed and I's dotted by the time that is up, to be able to say, okay, this is what our next deal is. So I would think that with him having he was a president of Activision
Gaming as well.
Yeah, gaming. And then he was the COO of MLB. He has a sports background, but he also has a deep business background with TV, CBS, like you said. So yeah, I think they wanted somebody that was probably able to kind of usher them into the next TV deal as well. This one's done. The only thing, The only thing that it may do is get bigger because the Big Ten's going to probably add more teams in the next year or two. That's the only thing that will change, is it will, maybe just be more teams, but they want him in place to get that next one in place, because I don't know about you, but I'm pretty impressed by what Kevin Warren did with that TV deal to get what they've got now. You got some big shoes to fill. And if he does, then, the Big Ten's going to have money hand over fist going forward in the next 10 years, because if he's anywhere close to what Warren did, they're going to keep just bringing money in. And I don't know much about him. Other than just what we've just covered. I don't even know how to pronounce his name, like you said. But at the same time, once it becomes official, we'll know how to pronounce his name, because everybody's going to be talking about it. But it's interesting to see, or to wonder, where the Big Ten goes from this when it comes to adding teams. Who are they going to target? A guy that has worked in television for long enough and knows the ins and outs and what moves the needle. Do they make a harder push for Notre Dame now? Do they make a push for the bigger names from the Pac-12 or from even the Big 12? I still posit you go after Baylor and get that Texas and Dallas market, because that's a huge market to have. It's top 5 in the country. But is that where they go with this guy coming in?
It'll be interesting. And I think that's what a lot of the conversation's getting ready to be about, is what the future looks like. But much to the point we just made, we, at this current time, we're talking, it's just sources report, but there's a lot of reports on it. It looks like it's going to be official soon.
Since we don't have an official announcement, can we just call him Tony Soprano?
Why not? I'm sure he doesn't mind.
Until we get an official name. I mean, official name pronunciation.
But we should get official word on some of that coming forward, and next week we'll be able to dive into that a little bit more. But wanted to mention that we understand it's on the radar. We're just kind of caught in a little bit of a purgatory here.
We can't talk specifics yet because it's not specific yet.
Yep. So yeah, wanted to make sure we at least address that, though. But we'll get into it once we get more and more info and things start to fall where they should. But okay, let's close down shop for another episode of Big Talk.
That's us putting a bow on it.
Oh, I like that.
Do this, jazz fingers, and then pull the bow.
All right, Sam, where can they?
All right, so you go to the Instagram and the Twitter, and it's at B1G _talk. So Big Talk in the Big Ten fashion of big. So B1G _talk at Twitter, and on Instagram, just search in B1G Talk, Big Talk. For Facebook, we're on Odd Pods Media, only sports show there. Awesome. And then we're also streamed. It says twice a week, but we just, gave you the caveat as to when it becomes only once a week. But we're on ASAP. They have an app that you can go on and check out past episodes and try to, tell us why we were wrong because we misspoke earlier or whatever. I don't care. As long as you're watching, I really don't care. But then also all the other great sports shows that they have on there. If you want to watch us but don't have the ASAP app, one thing you probably should, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. But you can go to Spotify and watch the video stream. But anywhere else you find podcasts, you'll find the audio version of this show. Boom.
Perfect.
Done. Donezo.
Another episode of Big Talk in the books. That's Sam Sprunger. I'm Dalton Shetler. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And until next time, so long.
See ya.